How can we broaden the scope of what presence is and how it can be applied in our lives?
I
Welcome
was
to
in
the
presence, and
Frequency
in presence I
Files.
was in alignment, and
Thanks
in
for joining us
alignment
as we
the
explore
laws
the
of
vibrations,
3D
forms,
do
and
not
creations and mechanisms
rule.
behind them that inform the nature of existence. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of the Maya Mendoza interview series. We were chatting about weather as an analogy for the inner and outer state. Let's continue the conversation.
Yes, inner sunshine can be reflected in outer sunshine. My son tells me that I'm a weather witch, and I'm a parking witch or a driving witch.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Have you got any fun stories on that you want to share?
So I mean, I read Richard Bach's book, The Illusions of a Reluctant Messiah, or Illusions, right? So it's about, and I think the subtitle is The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And there's a particular chapter in there where the reluctant Messiah is it, out of boredom, if nothing else, is creating clouds. And how Donald Shimoda, who was the writer, the protagonist in the story, begins to understand that he has the capacity to master his energy and direct that energy through a focused mind. Okay. And this was before the idea of manifesting, which is another story, was really popular. This was I'm trying to remember my age at the time, probably 16. And the two books that I read over and over during that summer were Illusions and Wayne Dwyer's book, Your Erroneous Zones, which utterly changed how I thought about myself. Talk about self-concept changing. I decided to, with my son, you'll hear lots about Kane. So he would have been about 3, 4 at the time, and we would lay on the grass. And at the end of each day, I started to teach him how to unwind his day experience by laying on the grass and letting the earth take all the energies that were too heavy for him to process. So we're talking now maybe 1986, just in case you all wondered what, when all this started. This was not normal behavior in the world, okay? And especially in the UK. And so we would do that, and we would let go of all the energies that were and emotions too heavy for him to mulch on his own. And then we would breathe, and we would bring down pink clouds, and we would be in the clouds, and then we would float up into the clouds, and invariably in the cloud. And the pink cloud would cleanse through the energy system, and we would breathe it through our bodies, and we would breathe in light, and we would breathe in healing, and we would do these things. Remember, kid with ADHD, hyperactive, all these things, this neurodiversity. So I had to figure out very early on how to support him in managing his own states more rather than less. This is one of the things we did. And invariably, as we were laying on the grass, and we would look up, and there would be clouds forming. And he would go, "There you go, Mum, clouds forming. We've got our own clouds now." And I would say, "Yes, and you can put some part of your energy in there, and you can travel around the whole planet, pick up all the energies that you want, and rain out all the energies that you don't, and then bring it back tomorrow as a pink cloud." And so that's what we used to do. So that's one thing. With regards to parking, I know a lot of people will go, "I need a parking space." Well, I realized something very strange about myself. So I moved to London, back to London in 2018, to a very busy part of London where parking was at a premium. And I used to have this, Kane would say, "Remember to order a parking space, Mum." And I would go, parking space, parking space, parking space. Every single time without fail. There was not one parking space. There were 3. Every time. And I had a dinky car. I had an IQ cube. So it was like 2/3 of the size of a normal car. So sometimes there were double parking spaces, and I could get into a quarter of them. It's just like, and Kane always used to look at me and go, "You're just a parking witch, aren't you? You're just a parking witch." So, and then the other thing that with the driving, 9 times out of 10, when we would drive from London to Scotland or vice versa, we would have a free run, which is a very rare thing. Or we would be told there was a traffic jam ahead, and Kane would say, oh, just clear it, Mum. And as we got to the bit on the map that was, on the sat nav that was red, it would just go yellow and then it would go blue. And he would go, I don't know how you do that. But I think it's fascinating, because consciously one doesn't know how one does it. One cannot do it through force. One does it through presence. Again, it's presence and intention, and creating something from presence in the moment that then manifests in the time frame or the timeline that you're in. That makes sense.
Yeah. You said something earlier about meeting and being met when it comes to relating to self and to others. Can you tell us more about that?
Big topic, hey? So this phrase I use, I'm sure other people do too, of meeting yourself where you are. That was a big smile. I know you can't, I know nobody can see this. Because I realized something yesterday. I'm going to give you an example now, another example, another story. I use me. So I was having a conversation in my head about my dad and about an individual that I got involved with a few years ago, who was intense. When you have these relationships that are all consuming, and they swallow you up. I was in one of those, and so was he, thank God, right? So passion is one of the ways that we meet ourselves and meet another individual in the same state where you are. It's in that case, there is a level of intensity and presence, isn't there, right? And sexually, if you are in a mutually rewarding sexual relationship, you are meeting that person where they are. And if it's not, you're not. So that's one way of looking at it from an intensity perspective. Then there's an intentional perspective. It is very easy, and I have definitely played this role and this trait for many years. It's very easy to be in a conversation, apparently, with somebody and not be present to them, isn't it? Where we are waiting for our next opportunity to speak, or our brain is reacting to what is being said, and therefore we need to talk something out or express something, particularly those of us who are neurodiverse, have ADHD and these various other things going on, these symptoms that we've been labeled as. So if we, for instance, if one has an unmet need to be heard and seen, we will perpetually interrupt other people. That's just an example. Okay. So meeting somebody else where they are means, again, here we come back to being present, being curious and interested as to the state that that person is in, so that we are not trying to placate, advise, overlay our own experience upon, or even make an assumption about where that person is. Okay? So people talk about listening skills, and they talk about 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they forget the heart. So when we make a decision to listen to others in our own presence with an open heart, we meet people where they are. When we accept our divinity in ourselves, look in the mirror and go, I'm ready to listen to you, and listen to yourself, your body, and even all the cacophony of voices that tell you that you're bad, you're wrong, you're this, that, and the other. You can laugh at them and say, wow, look at all this unfinished business in me. Without judgment, without having to follow a voice. We can look on and go, whoa, school playground of crazy. that is meeting ourselves where we are, as opposed to latching onto the one that's the bully over there, the one that's the victim over there, the one that's the wimp, the one that's got the eating disorder, the one that's that has to beat everybody else at basketball. Okay, so we just become that higher level aspect of our selves with that capacity to be present to all of it and observe. And in that moment and those subsequent moments, because obviously if you're in your presence and in the present, it is moment by moment, there is no past, there is no future, we can go, this is where I'm at. This is what's going on right now. What do I want in the next moment? What do I wish to create or recreate? I'm at choice. And the choice comes from presence and breath, meeting yourself there. Just acknowledging that all those chattering monkey voices and all those kids in the playground, they're all relevant, but they are not in alignment. They're all playing a role. And our behavior is our human behavior in this world is driven by all of that, but it doesn't have to be. Makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
And I think it's an amazing reminder of depersonalizing anything that may be coming at us when we're in relationship to others, and any meaning making that people want to impose onto another, is to, if you're in this neutral present state, there's no space for any of that.
It takes huge practice because we all have such, we have a cacophony of voices, and we have therefore as many unmet needs, perceived unmet needs, and incompleteness and fragments in us. But I always look at it as, if I feel something rising up, there's an unfinished conversation. Yeah. And if I project, so sometimes that trigger is real. Okay, it's a real, you look at it and go, I have asked this person to do X, Y, Z 150 times, and I'm now fed up with that person not changing their behavior. And I don't mean big stuff. I mean squeezing the toothpaste in the middle, you know, cleaning your teeth and not cleaning a sink, something simple and little like that, little stuff. And a person doesn't listen. And eventually you go, I will be heard. And therefore you react in a way that gets that person's attention. You will snap, you will snarl, you will do what's required to set a boundary, because anger is always about an absence of boundaries, or boundaries that are stepped on, right? And so that's one part of it. For bigger conversations, these days, I think I would breathe for 10 minutes and make sure I was in my, when people say in your heart, what I mean is that I understand what safety is and love is in myself before broaching something that is obviously going to cause a ripple in that other person's reaction, because you're stepping on their self-perception. And I had an experience of this actually yesterday, where I've decided not to do a course that I signed up for 3 months ago, because I have solved my own problems. So I realize now I signed up in order to pay attention to myself, in order to take myself through a journey in life that would resolve some unfinished business in my world. And the rule was that you put a deposit down, and you don't get the deposit back, and they because they will give it to another, they will put it onto another course that you might take later. So I had to state my case, because it wasn't a small deposit. I realized as I studied this woman's work, she is fantastic for a certain type of person, but I have evolved beyond the need for that now, that level of introspection in that way. And I just made it very gently, very clear that this is where I was at. I had an intention that I would be met where I was, that I would be heard, I would be seen. And I didn't even have to ask for a refund. The end of the conversation was, we will contact you, the sales department will contact you and set up your refund, Maya. I didn't even ask for it. But it was so obvious and so clear because I was so calm, not defensive, not lacking, not victim, not anything, just present, that my standpoint was, I really respect this woman's work, but it's not for me. And I'm never going to move forward with this woman's work. Thank you. And therefore it's like, right, okay, you can have your deposit back. It was fascinating. And I did what I said. I sat and I thought about the male energy in me, the divine masculine, and the relationship I now have with my father, which is resolved, and smiled and felt myself rooted into the world. And we, in my mind, we got onto a stage, a vaudeville stage, and did a dance to a particular song. And I was enjoying that male energy in that playful way. And then I closed my eyes and I thought, feel the love of 1,000 mothers, cosmic mothers. So I did. And I went into the meeting like that, right? Having danced vaudeville with my dad and feeling the feeling of 1,000 cosmic mothers. And I was just completely present. And the result was perfect.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about, perhaps more recently or as far back as you're willing to go, what the transformational journeys have been like for you and how that has then had a flow-on effect?
I think I can, because it's vast. I mean, if I look at the history of most healers, stroke or therapists or carers, and even many doctors, we generally have been in a dysfunctional situation or seen someone suffer or seen others be in pain in some way, and we've been directly involved in the witnessing of that or having harm foisted upon us. Okay, so what I understand and what I've seen is those of us who are in the helping healing professions generally are A, trying to resolve pain in ourselves, and B, we have a compulsion on some level, and I do mean a compulsion, to help and save others. And in the early days of ourselves, we take that on because we believe, absolutely incorrectly, but we believe that in saving others, they will save us. Okay, so if I, as I mentioned before, if I eat for my mother, if I eat her emotions and the food that she won't feed herself, I will alleviate her pain. And if she's in less pain, maybe she'll love me more. ... Okay. So that's the first premise of why, not just me, but why we all get into this work. Number two, the next premise is we are taught and shown that we are not enough and that we are broken. So we live under that premise, most of us, for most of our lives. At no point does anyone say to us, not a psychiatrist that I've met or a medic that I've met, in conventional therapeutic settings, not one person I've ever met has said, you're whole and complete. There's nothing wrong with you. So we foster within us the illusion that we are broken, and we foster that we are not good enough. And we thrive, our identity, our self-concept is that there is something wrong, we are not enough, we need to be fixed. So all work, all therapeutic work, everything I was ever taught came from that space, other than the parts of me, the higher parts of me that knew different. So over the years, when I started to study psychosynthesis and NLP, it was absolutely on the fringe of everything. It wasn't conventional. When I look back, when I studied Gestalt, it was on the fringe. It was a new science of change, of growth, of integration of self. And I think I've always, that my driver was, as I said, you know, I'm unconsciously, I'm not enough. I need to be more loved. And the way, as or you know, particularly very abused children will seek out a way of making sure that they are relevant and important, and therefore they become consummate professional Olympic gold medalists in people pleasing. I would never have called myself that, because I didn't even realize that my expertise in getting and giving people and identifying exactly what they wanted and completing it for them was a sense of people pleasing. When I was doing the very physical healing work, I nearly burnt myself out, because as soon as a client was in front of me, I felt it was my responsibility to fix them. And I can tell you stories about that healing work that is miraculous. I was absolutely what people would call a psychic surgeon. Things that were happening under my hands in people's bodies that were, some people would call miraculous. So I learned through that work that I had a gift or a skill when I stepped out of those assumptions about myself that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that one cannot interfere with time and space and physical structure in a state of lack, in a state of not good enough, in a state of, and my intention was to help. And I had to learn to lose myself in those moments, not understanding that I was so focused on the client that I was in absolute presence. I didn't understand that that's what was happening. But I was so focused, and I was seeing into people's bodies. And in seeing into people's bodies and being in that state of presence, change naturally took place. Literally, things would pop out that shouldn't be there. Burns would heal under my hands. I remember one particular friend had ringworm on her back, and she had this circle, and she saw what happened with somebody else, and she said, "Can you help me with?" And I went, "Sure, let me see." And as I looked at it and moved it literally, this ring just flew out, and everyone went, "What the heck?" and just into dust. Things like that would happen. But it was because there were the aspects of me were so much in presence. So from a physical perspective, I kind of understood, but I didn't relate the changes that were happening to the fact that I was in presence, and in presence I was in alignment, and in alignment, the laws of 3D do not rule, okay? So I have this capacity to see through people, not just their physical cell structure, but on a wave level, on a vibrational level, on a color level, on a story level, on an inner landscape level. I can see all of this, and it entrances me, never mind the client when we start working. I am entranced into presence by my intention to help that person resolve this thing, because I also know that I used to say to people, you know, you are me, I am you, we are all one, and therefore if you're not fixed, I'm not fixed, and I can help fix, right? So I got COVID right at the beginning in 2020, and at the time we had just we were losing older family members weekly. I mean, I'm talking 90, 95-year-olds who were dying not from COVID, but because they weren't going to hospital when they needed medical care. Okay, right. So we lost about 4 people in 3 weeks, and it was shocking. And then there was another event that happened, and I have most of my life lived with symptoms of autoimmune since I was a small child. And I assumed when I couldn't get up off the sofa that I was just having another autoimmune phase. It took me 8 months to realize that I'd lost my sense of taste and smell. And that because it came back in an instant. I mean, literally one day, I kept saying to Kane, all I'm eating is toast and marmalade. What the heck? Right? Because it's all I could taste. And chili peppers. Couldn't taste it. I didn't realize it's kind of almost like COVID took over my sense of myself. So I was still working. I could still do my work with my clients, but I couldn't look after myself the same way. So anyway, I got COVID and long COVID set in because I didn't get the advice from my endocrinologist for the thyroid disorder to not have the jabs. Okay. So when he found out that I had the first jab, he went, oh my God, it's going to trigger the autoimmune. And so the combination of COVID and the autoimmune flattened me to the point where I'm still in recovery, but me being me, and I've had COVID 5 times, and each time it's taken on a different iteration and it's knocked me out. In addition, I went into late menopause at the same time, roughly the same time, and was not on HRT because couldn't get any medical support properly for 2 years around COVID. So I was living with the chaos of menopause, the chaos of long COVID, and the chaos of my own unresolved symptomatic supposed immune system. So I was flattened. And in that flattening, I could not cope, which was the biggest bloody gift that the universe and my body could have given me. And this is why, because coping is a strategy of suppression. And here is the key to how the work has changed. So everything that I was and everything that I did, despite the fact that it was so miraculously awesome, if I say so myself, and that my clients always got massive, extraordinary results, was still coming from a part of me that was incomplete and in unmet needs. So my soul was getting through because of my presence, but there were times when it would crack and I would see a pattern happening with a client or myself, and I'm going, oh, we've lost the magic. Sometimes that would come through too much familiarity with a client in the old days, or it would come from our patterns being too close. Okay, and I will defy any therapist or coach to tell me it doesn't happen for them, because it does. None of us are immune to that. Okay. So anyway, what happened was that as I could not cope, I began to, some days, all I could do was be in bed and breathe. Literally. Okay. And if I got COVID again, or I had a thyroid flare up, or something happened that meant that, let's say my urates were really high and I was experiencing symptoms of gout, there was nothing I could do but be where I was. I knew that enough from a healing perspective, and from a book I read in my early 20s called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought, which is about this thick, which is, well, I'm showing you my fingers, about 4 inches thick. I still have in the library, which is one of the things that colored how I was thinking. And now I realize that fake positivity doesn't work either. Okay, but at least it taught me to notice with myself and my clients where we were beating ourselves up and where we were exacerbating the pain and amplifying the pain. Okay, so in this state, going back to, in this state of not coping, I found that I could breathe. Okay, I could not do what I did before to push through. I could not find that energy that I used to suppress my soul, to suppress my genius, to suppress all that others had told me were wrong and bad, where I was at fault, not in the family or the cultural narrative. Fantastic. And what I noticed is the more that I approached myself in breath and in presence and in the moment, the deeper the shifts were occurring. And I had a whole bunch of friends who have been with me on this journey of this therapeutic and healing journey as friends and as clients and as former clients, who I was still in dialogue with and who were asking for examples of what I was experiencing. And I started to notice and watch. I wasn't well enough to work formally, but I was well enough to be present to myself and the people who wanted to participate in this new paradigm that was awakening in me. Okay. And this new paradigm was always there, but it wasn't the dominant premise. So now the dominant presence is, somebody said it to me the other day. They said, it's amazing, Maya, you love yourself totally. And I went, I do. And therefore I love everything totally. I have that capacity to be in a state of presence and flow and love as the dominant frequency in the work. And therefore the work reflects that energy. So, and obviously it's obvious to me through these conversations that also there is intelligence that is here. And so my mind is involved, that capacity to have an intention and follow a train of thought and be curious enough to flow into the presence of someone else to the degree that we are merged as one in that vibration. And for me to know that if the intention is to be present and the intention is to help someone be in alignment, this is the shift. So I am not broken, you are not broken. I am enough, you are enough. We are one, therefore we all heal simultaneously. And every piece of work that we do individually in this state and together makes a difference and has an impact and has a dent in the world. So the work has changed from being a personal mission to fix you and to fix myself to a gift of alignment, a gift of self-love, and a gift of presence that allows for perpetual expansion and soul embodiment. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to express that.
I'm very grateful for being part of this dialogue with you and having the privilege to witness this beautiful sharing. Thank you.
I'm standing here with my hands open up to the staring up at the ceiling and going to the heavens. Thank you so much. I think one of the most important things in life that most people run away from is being known. I think that most people, and I could honestly tell you this of myself in the past also, that most people are scared of their shadow. Literally, the parts of themselves that they have marked as wrong and have been told are wrong, bad, incomplete, not enough. People are ashamed of them and fear them being seen. And when that's not there anymore, and I can honestly, as I'm speaking, I know that we're not on camera, right? But I know I am lighting up and glowing, and I know you can feel, because you're sensitive, what is happening to my field. But I feel so safe in myself and so complete that I'm happy to be known and seen. And I am the person that has, I used to be on TV every morning in the 90s, and yet nobody ever saw me because I was masked and playing a role, right? And now it doesn't exist. There's been a process of utilizing the shamanic abilities that I have. I said to someone once, well, recently, what's happened this year is I've been working with the energies, the chi, and the intelligence of jellyfish, an immortal jellyfish, and understanding what it is to be in a flow, not having control. The environment itself takes me from one place to another. The planet itself, the what do we call it, the tides, right? The jellyfish are subject to, where they are located is subject to something that they have no control over, that's greater than them. I had to learn that. I had to understand what it was to be present in the flow. And then I got introduced to immortal jellyfish and the process that they have of that, the fact that they carry, that they are luminescent and in the deep ocean. And I realized then the statement was, you are carrying your own light. Everywhere you go, you're carrying, look at the jellyfish, look what and these jellyfish, I read an article about these jellyfish can literally revert themselves back to two cells and reborn themselves, rebirth themselves. Yes, I know. So they are immortal, not because they live forever as they are, but because they can go back and rebirth themselves over and over again. Okay. And I looked at this and I thought, wow, that is me. I have that skill. I'm tingling from top to toe, even as I say it. I have reinvented myself a number of times. I have recovered from severe illness a number of times. And I thought, now I'm being shown that this capacity for self-regeneration is really possible when you let go of all the reasons why you can't. So there was that. So that was the female aspect being shown to me of that. As that progressed over about a year, this working with jellyfish energy, the voice said to me, now you have been in the flow, now be the flow. Completely different experience. And then a few months after that, now direct the flow. It's from a different level, because the healing capacity to work with energy the way I always have did that anyway, but I was being taught it consciously by myself while I was utterly flattened. Okay, so on the surface, it appears like nothing's going on. It appears you're broken. It appears you're sick. It appears you're dysfunctional. I just stopped coping. I stopped suppressing myself because I had no option and got into that. The male aspect of all the things to show up, it was a snail. Okay, prior to the snail, it was a mountain goat, but then I couldn't put my feet on the floor. So leaping from mountain to mountain and learning to have legs and be grounded didn't work. So then this snail shows up. And I looked at the snail and everyone said, oh, carrying your home on your back. And I went, that's not it. That's not what it's trying to teach me. So I looked at it more carefully and realized the eyes were on stalks, so that it could see above itself. And then I realized that the stalks could move. I was watching snails, by the way. I have lots of snails in my garden. So I was watching them. And then I realized that the stalks could move in different directions. And it literally could see, at any point in time, it could do a 360 scan of itself, because its eyes were, so it could watch itself and it could be aware of its environment. I thought, wow. So look at this. The male aspect is telling me that there is 360 vision, and that I can literally move my awareness from 3D, as some people would call it, to 4, to 5, to 6, to 7. I don't have to be in it. I just have to be able to observe it and understand what's possible within it. It's marvelous not being able to cope. Gifts that we don't realize, right? And then the thing that struck me the most of all, not being able to bloody walk at the time, okay? And I really, really do mean it. I mean, literally, I could get from the bed to the bathroom, and I could use the toilet and sit on a chair and wash my face and do various things. And I could put a chair in the shower and go back to bed. I couldn't get up and down the stairs without somebody, David being my walking Zimmer frame, or pushing me up, you know, with his hands on my bum back up to the bedroom, because I literally didn't have the strength in my legs and my feet were too sore for months and months. Okay, so I looked at this and I was watching out the kitchen window, and I know I'm in Scotland, but I have palm trees in my garden. Don't ask, another story. So I'm watching this enormous snail, about 4 inches long, come down a leaf, circle around the bottom of the leaf, and then go up the leaf in a minute and a half. And this leaf was 3 foot long. And I thought, my God, everyone thinks that snails are slow. But look at the speed that this thing must be running 30 miles an hour in relation to what it's just completed. And then I realized something else. It's taking its lubrication with it. So then I noticed it fell on the path, and it skiddled along the path just as quickly as it skiddled along the leaf. And I went, wow, everywhere this snail goes, it takes its own, it smooths out its path. And I went, wow. And that was the male aspect. So I just sat with those two aspects, understanding my presence in the world, and that I could get from A to B with ease, and that I could be in multi-dimensions all at one time. And then at the same time, learning to surrender to the environment before mastering the environment, which is what the jellyfish were teaching me. And I just think I'm just so lucky. I'm so lucky. And recently I've been having conversations about being in a sacred mush. And what I mean by that is, if you take the past me, the one that was always trying to fix, do, be, avoid, which is all of us, and we look at that as a caterpillar, a very hungry caterpillar, trying to fix ourselves and eating and eating and eating in order for something else to happen when the time is right, i.e. go into the mush. I didn't know that I was the very hungry caterpillar until the very hungry caterpillar showed up, and I watched it, and I asked it, are you ready to rest now? Are you full up? And it said yes, and it took a last few bites of this very fat green leaf and blew up, rolled onto its back with its little legs wiggling in the air, and the cocoon formed. And I went, ah. And then I had these other experiences, which you and I have basically touched on previously, about discovering that a big family secret, discovering that I had an older brother from my father before he married my mom, and how that shifted my perspective about many, many things. And it was one of the other capacities that developed in me very quickly. Like, some people talk about having a spiritual awakening, a sudden thing that happens. Well, for me, it was like that this secret that was revealed again, and it changed the work. It changed the work because I suddenly understood that when truth comes, when real truth comes to the surface, not perceived truth, not an idea of a truth, but real truth comes to the surface, everything shifts and pivots around it. So I had this massive pivot, and that's only since April. And subsequently, that what I was learning through being not coping, through the so-called illnesses and the symptoms of not being able to stand on my own 2 feet. Oh, I couldn't be independent anymore. Right? Not being able to cut up my food because my hands couldn't hold a knife and fork. Wow. All of these things that happened that make up the structure of my identity, and our identities could not continue to function. So in the absence of that, something else, because I'm intelligent and I have will, and we all have free will, and instead of sitting there going with the question, why is this happening to me? I'm sick, I'm this, I'm going, what is the opportunity? That's just my mantra. What is the opportunity, and how do I profit from this? Right? It's been, for years, it's been the statement that I've asked when things go, I'll send over banana, I'll send over tip, right? When things go wrong and I trip over my own feet. And the opportunity was to not tap into my greatness, but to embody my greatness, and embody my genius, and embody my wisdom, and embody the universe. So that is how the work, again, that is more about how the work has changed. And that's actually what I bring other people, is that opportunity. And that excites me. So I'm not trying to fix things at all. I'm allowing myself and other people on a journey to self-discovery and expansion beyond anything that their imagination could conceive whilst they're trying to fix themselves.